Hey everybody, Gabe here. Um, it is Christmas Eve today, and I just wanted to. I tried to find a Santa hat kind of last minute. I thought I had one, but I don't, and so I guess I went with sort of a more New Year's type get up here. But it'll have to do. The Christmas decorations maybe in the background and all that will make up for it. But I just wanted to do a short video about a couple Christmas themed short stories that I read recently. Christmas is my favorite holiday, and I am perpetually on the lookout for Christmas themed literature, stories, things like that, which I feel like there's a strange paucity of. Obviously you have the Dickens novellas and some of Dickens's stories that are sort of classically Christmas themed, but it's not like Christmas movies where there's just a glut of them and you can kind of take your pick of the litter. I feel like Christmas literature is something that's a little more, I don't know, not as popular, I suppose. There just isn't as much of it. Maybe I'm sure there's stuff that I'm missing. So let me know, leave a comment or whatever, and let me know what your favorite Christmas reading traditions are, if you have any. So as you know, for the podcast recently, we read a collection of Truman Capote short stories. But there are two in this collection that we didn't touch on, and both of them have to do with Christmas. And so I just wanted to do a quick little video to celebrate the holiday with you all, for those of you that do celebrate. So the two stories that are collected in this collection are A Christmas Memory from 1956, so relatively early on in Capote's career, and then One Christmas, which is from 1982, so 2 years before Capote died. And I think you can really see the change or the evolution in Capote as a person and as a thinker through these two stories. The first one, A Christmas Memory, has to do with they both have to do with memories of Christmases, but the tone and sort of general orientation that Capote has towards these two memories is radically different between the two. The first one, A Christmas Memory, is a much more sort of nostalgic, melancholy meditation on his young friendship with an older, kind of distant relative who he lived with when he lived with his family in Alabama. His mother had moved to New York City and his father was living in New Orleans. He was sort of estranged from both his parents for most of his childhood. And that comes back in the second story, One Christmas, in a much bleaker, more bitter way. But this story is about his friendship with, I think she's some distant aunt or something, second cousin, third cousin, something like that, who he lives with in this large kind of compound in Alabama with some other relatives, where he was sent by his parents when they kind of separated and went their separate ways. Apologies. And so the story is him talking about his fond memories of this woman who is unnamed in A Christmas Memory, but is named in One Christmas as Miss Sook Falk. Sook Falk. It's pretty clear that they're the same woman. It's not made explicit, but it's pretty clear. It's this older woman who he sees as essentially his only friend in his childhood. And A Christmas Memory talks through these sort of very visceral sense memories that he has of making fruitcake and going through the process of harvesting the fruit. It's during Prohibition, so they have to go get this illicit rum from this shady character in town, and they make these fruitcakes and then they mail them out to random people, basically celebrities, the president. Or I guess it's not Prohibition. It's like, but I guess in the state at the time, it was like a dry. Prohibition was obviously much before that. But a lot of states, even, up to modern day. I lived in a dry county when I went to got my master's degree, actually. Um, anyway, it's really a sort of beautiful and sad kind of, deep sort of melancholia that Capote is tapping into here. And the story, it's just very evocative, right? It's a little saccharine, but isn't that really all what we want out of what we all want out of a Christmas tale? And it becomes very sad by the end because he is shipped off to a military school by his parents, and he has to leave this woman that he considered sort of his best friend. They talk about they were very poor. They had to save money throughout the whole year in order to buy the ingredients for these fruit cakes that they make. And they handmade each other presents every year, and this year they both made each other kites. His friend was a big kite flyer, and they would go fly kites together out in the fields in Alabama on Christmas morning. And it's just beautiful. And, he talks at the end about how he goes away, and he sort of realizes that this woman is getting older and eventually dies. And it's just very evocative. It's very sad, and again, just sort of a classic tearjerker, Christmas vibe, as it were. I'll read a little bit. I'll read a little bit from the beginning and a few other passages here. So this is how it starts. Imagine a morning in late November, a coming of winter morning more than 20 years ago. Consider the kitchen of a spreading old house in a country town. A great black stove is its main feature, but there is also a big round table and a fireplace with 2 rocking chairs placed in front of it. Just today, the fireplace commenced its seasonal roar. A woman with shorn white hair is standing at the kitchen window. She is wearing tennis shoes and a shapeless gray sweater over a summery calico dress. She is small and sprightly like a bantam hen, but due to a long youthful illness, her shoulders are pitifully hunched. Her face is remarkable, not unlike Lincoln's craggy like that, and tinted by sun and wind, but it is delicate too, finely boned, and her eyes are sherry-colored and timid. "Oh my," she exclaims, her breath smoking the window pane. "It's fruitcake weather." That's how the story opens, and they talk. He talks through them going out and harvesting the fruits, getting the rum. And eventually going to get a little Christmas tree, going to harvest a Christmas tree together. And it's just, I don't know. Yeah, it's very short. It's only about 5-6 pages, maybe 7 or 8. But it's beautiful, and it's just very, very sad. And I'll read a little bit from closer to the... Apparently there's an invasion. Invaders are coming. So this is from towards the end here. The invading army has retreated. And they mentioned Queenie here. Queenie is their little dog. And so this is after they've opened their Christmas gifts, and they have the 2 kites that they've made for each other. "Buddy, the wind is blowing. The wind is blowing, and nothing will do till we've run a pasture below the house where Queenie has scooted to bury her bone, and where, a winter hence, Queenie will be buried too. There, plunging through the healthily waist-high grass, we unreel our kites, feel them twitching at the string like sky fish as they swim into the wind. Satisfied, sun-warmed, we sprawl in the grass and peel satsumas and watch our kites cavort. Soon I forget the socks and hand-me-down sweater. I'm as happy as if we'd already won the $50,000 grand prize in the coffee naming contest. How foolish I am, my friend cries, suddenly alert, like a woman remembering too late she has biscuits in the oven. You know what I've always thought, she asks in a tone of discovery, and not smiling at me, but a point beyond. I've always thought a body would have to be sick and dying before they saw the Lord, and I imagined that when he came, it would be like looking at the Baptist window, pretty as colored glass with the sun pouring through, such a shine you don't know it's getting dark. And it's been a comfort to think of that shine taking away all the spooky feeling. But I'll wager it never happens. I'll wager at the very end a body realizes the Lord has already showed himself, that things as they are, her hand circles in a gesture that gathers the clouds and kites and grass, and Queenie pawing the earth over her bone. Just what they've always seen was seeing him, As for me, I could leave the world with today in my eyes. This is our last Christmas together. And then he goes on to talk about his life at the school a little bit, and going to college and getting the letter that his friend has passed away. And again, just a sort of beautiful, very small kind of slice of life from Capote's childhood. And again, it's very evocative. It's very sad, and I think it's a really nice. As I said earlier, just exactly what you want out of a little Christmas vignette. The second story, on the other hand, is a little bit more, a little darker, a little more bitter, perhaps. And this one is about One Christmas from 1982. The story is about a Christmas where Capote, obviously he doesn't sort of name himself in these stories, but he's shipped off to New Orleans from Alabama, where he had lived with his friend, who was referenced in the first story, Sook Falk. And he's shipped off to New Orleans to be with his father for Christmas, against his will, and sort of not enjoying a minute of it. And he gets there, and his father, who has done well for himself through, it's implied by his mother in a sort of flash forward scene that he realizes later in life, basically was marrying elderly rich women and taking their money after they died, is the implication. We don't really get the details, but that's the idea. And it's just about him sort of coming to terms with his father being this strange, essentially a stranger to him, who he doesn't really know, doesn't have this kind of emotional connection with, and his father kind of trying to, classic absentee dad thing, overdoing it, taking him out, taking him to all these fancy parties in New Orleans, telling him he can have whatever he wants for Christmas, and sort of overdoing it. And the whole time, young Truman sort of just missing home, missing his friend, thinking about wishing that he could see snow. And at the beginning of the story, he talks about this unreasonable view that he had that maybe he would see snow in New Orleans, which is even further south and hotter than where he lived in Alabama, which is just a classic sort of childhood misconception. By the end of it, he sort of gets bitter at his father. His father has a Christmas Eve party, and he sees him cavorting with older women, sort of seemingly confirming the characterization of his ex-wife. And this kind of shatters some images that the main character has of his father. He later in the night hears his father and sees him going up and upstairs and downstairs, putting presents under the tree, also like simultaneously shattering his understanding of Santa Claus. He's still, I forget how old the character is supposed to be in this story, but basically coming to the realization that Santa Claus doesn't exist. He gets bitter about this. He wakes up the next morning, starts opening the presents before his dad is awake, and he finds a little pop gun that his dad gives him, and he just starts shooting it off around the house to wake his father up. And he plays this little psychological game with his father where his father is asking him, like, do you like all the presents that Santa brought you? And he's like, oh, they're great, but what did you get me? Which is just such a cutting, mean childhood, dig. You can imagine a kid sort of saying that to inflict maximum emotional harm. And his father sort of caught it back, and then he basically so essentially he makes his father then go out before he is to go back to Alabama on the bus and buy him this very expensive, fancy kind of like sit-in airplane car thing that they had seen at a window in one of the stores, walking around New Orleans in the days leading up to Christmas. And his father, drunk, brings him to the bus station and is sort of crying and kind of a mess, and sort of just like, can't you just tell me that you love me before you go home? And he doesn't, and the father's kind of whisked away by police and the taxi cab driver. And the story ends with him writing his father a letter, sending him, sending him a postcard back from Alabama saying that, here's how the story ends. Stars sparkled and snow whirled inside my head. The last thing I remembered was the peaceful voice of the Lord telling me something I must do, and the next day I did it. I went with Sook to the post office and bought a penny postcard. That same postcard exists today. It was found in my father's safety deposit box when he died last year. Here's what I had written him. Hello, Pop. Hope you are well. I am, and I am learning to pedal my plane so fast I will soon be in the sky, so keep your eyes open. And yes, I love you, buddy. So a much more kind of adult, there's a lot more bitterness in this second story, and remembering moments where childhood sort of becomes lost in the realization about your parents, and coupled together with the realization about Santa Claus. His friend Sook, who he goes back to and asks about Santa Claus, tells him that Santa Claus is basically God himself, and that everybody is Santa Claus, and that we all sort of instantiate Santa-ness in our relationship with God, trying to save his understanding of Santa Claus in something of a clever way. So yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit about those two stories. I mean, I think that they're interesting to read together because both of them obviously are Christmas themed, but the tone is so different between the two. And it is, when you realize that the second one was written 2 years before Capote's death, with the sort of a lifetime of hindsight, and when you know a little bit about Capote's adult life, a little bit more bitterness, jadedness, cynicism. It's just a very interesting evolution. So I expect that I will be reading both of these stories as a tradition every year. Maybe I'll stick with the Christmas memory if I'm looking for the fond, evocative sense memory type. And if I'm having a bad one, maybe I'll read One Christmas. But anyway, that's it. I hope you all have a lovely holiday. And let me know if you have any Christmas traditions in terms of reading. What stories do you read? Are there novels? I'm always looking for recommendations because it's mostly been Dickens in the past. So again, happy holidays. I hope everyone's doing well, and thanks for watching.